But, well, not really though, because we say that we'll respond to that.
Welcome, everybody. I'll call the meeting to order. First up is Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand if you're able and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag
Hold on 1 second.
of the United. Oh. It's back there somewhere. I know. We could just do it to your mask, right?
State flag, no American flag. Oh boy.
I wonder if it's being used at an event or something right now.
All right, we will get back because we do not currently have an American flag, but thank you, everybody. No, that's fine. Thank you, everybody. That's the first time since I've been on the committee in a long time that we've had that. I know, my mask is a flag.
Sometimes you just assume that things are there, but
When you turn around, as they're always there, but then they aren't.
Which classroom have they been using it as? You just said they were using it as a classroom. Which one?
they've been using this for a lot of classrooms because we've had that whole area of the school phased out because they're doing repair because of the flood. So all the drop box has been in here, all the acting, all the orchestra, all the stage, everything's just been a classroom, so.
Thank you, everybody. Apologize for that, but it should be better next time. Public comment. Does anyone have anything they wish to comment on, not on tonight's agenda? Seeing no one, I will move on. We have a great piece tonight in which we have a student showcase, and so I'll turn it over to Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, good evening. I'd like to turn this over now to Mrs. Latenda. She's the principal, as you know, of the John T. Nichols Junior Middle School. There is a program in place that's been in place now for, I believe, just about 10 years. It's called Project 351, the 351 standing for all the cities and towns in Massachusetts, the collective population. And an ambassador from each town is chosen, and they represent your town in a lot of really exciting activities, a lot of them basically voluntary activities. If you follow Project 351 in the past at all, it is they tend to do a lot of volunteerism, and then they're asked to go back to their own communities and do some more volunteerism. So each year at Nichols Middle School, we have an ambassador who's chosen, and Mrs. Latender is here tonight to introduce this year's Project 351 ambassador. Welcome, Mrs. Latender.
Thank you, Superintendent Lynch, and good evening, Chairman Young and school committee members and members of the greater community. Thank you for having me here tonight. I'm very excited to give you a little introduction, which I think Mr. Lynch did, but Project 351 is it's a service leadership program where we nominate a student every year from our school. And I actually reach out to our staff and say, it's that time of year, we need to pick a Project 351 ambassador for student leadership. And it's about someone who is humble and kind of a quiet leader, and demonstrates kindness and leadership and good service and just an all-around solid person. And so I reached out to staff, and several names came up, but one name just kept coming up over and over again, and a lot of great accolades. And so just so you know, that Project 351 did begin in 2011 with former Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick, who believed in community and youth leadership. And so the goal of Project 351 was to recognize statewide youth leadership and unity within the 351 8th grade ambassadors representing our Massachusetts cities and towns. So Project 351 Enrichment is, they engage in some training and mentorship, and then they dedicate a year to build unity and kindness and transform the lives in various communities through their service work for the year. So we're very excited to call Lily Price to the podium as our Project 351 ambassador. Come on over, Lily. Congratulations. She deserves a round of applause. I have to say I had the pleasure of sitting down, talking to Lily, and getting to know her a little better. And last year was a different year, as we all know, and she's currently an 8th grader here. But first of all, I'd like to let you know that Lily is a very impressive young lady, and I would like to recognize Lily's parents, Miss Jackie Schofield and Jason Price right over here. You've raised an amazing young lady who's a great role model for others. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Lily that I've got from my interview with her. So Lily has been on our student council for the past 3 years, and as a 6th grader, she was she led the leadership development committee, and then during her 7th and 8th grade year, she is then our student council president, which she is now. And she leads by example for sure. And she also has been playing basketball since 3rd grade and been part of the AAU basketball team for about 1.5 years. And she also plays for the Nichols Middle School team, and she's been quite a leader. Miss Moriarty is one of her coaches, along with Mr. Dion, and they said early on she's a loud communicator and cheerleader. She gives high fives and encourages the younger team members. Despite her extreme talent, Lily is humble, and her love of the game shines through. And a lot of the comments I receive from staff says how humble she is and how kind she is. She goes and helps out with music and helps teach the younger students in the younger grades, and she helps them along in art and volunteers in art on Tuesday mornings, I believe it is. So she's always jumping in to help out and always willing to help others. She's also been playing basketball at Nichols Middle School for 3 years. And this past summer, you attended the Massachusetts Junior Conservation Camp in Russell, Massachusetts. And at the end of the camp, Lily was nominated and voted as a super camper. And that is because she demonstrated great responsibility and leadership. And with this nomination, Lily is welcome to come back next summer as a counselor in training. And not many people get that honor. And I think that just proves, another example of your great character. In addition, Lily loves learning about animals and their habitat. She's also informed me that she loves science and history and is thinking about, she's also thinking about attending, joining the military with hopes of attending West Point or the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. And I have to say, when I was in 8th grade, I was not thinking like that. So good for you. You have a lot of great goals, and she's accomplished many things. She's doing a fantastic job, and congratulations, Mom and Dad, for raising such a wonderful young lady. So I think it goes without saying that Lily is an incredible role model and a humble leader at Nichols Middle School. It is my pleasure to sit with Lily and learn about her and her interests and goals. I have no doubt Lily will represent, Nichols Middle School very well and represent our community as the Project 351 ambassador. So congratulations, Lily. We're very happy to have you at Nichols Middle School and represent our school and community. So thank you for doing such a great job every day. She does. So I don't know if anyone has any questions or would like to ask Lily anything. Did I get it all right, Lily? Yeah.
First of all, thank you for being a part of Project 351. I've been on the committee for 8 years, and always impressed with those who serve at Project 351. In fact, many of the people who've been the leader of Project 351 have taken Natalia's role and served in that position on the school committee. So that's been fantastic. I know the superintendent's daughter has been one of the original Project 351 members, and it's a great program. So thank you for doing that for us. We appreciate it. And it sounds fantastic, and we're glad you had a good opportunity, but I'll turn it over if other people have questions. Rich, go right ahead.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for being here, and we heard a lot of great things about you just now, and I know one of the last things that people like to do is to talk about themselves, but I wanted to know, and there's a noble goal for this, but I wanted to know what you think is one of the primary reasons why you were chosen for this, for the purposes of giving advice to those that might come next, and how they might demonstrate some of these things as well. So what do you think it is? What was the key?
I think probably one of the reasons that I was chosen, that other future people can be chosen, is just being obviously a leader, but being kind and showing respect to others and people should show kindness and respect towards other people and just be an overall like good person and not be mean to other people. Just do good things and you'll be on the right track.
Thank you very much. And one of the things I heard about you in the description that I think I liked the most was that you're humble. And I think that's a really good way to be a leader without being a loud person that forces other people to do things. It's just by example. So just thank you for being who you are, and I hope that you're passing it down so that someone can come up behind you and be the same. Thank you.
Any other questions, Teresa?
Congratulations, Lily, and thank you again for representing. I just had a question regarding your goals, like personal goals this year. What do you think, I don't know if you even know that much about this program, but what do you see for yourself this year as you represent Nichols and the community of Middleborough?
Well, through this program, I'm hoping to try to bring the fundraising and the volunteer work that they're promoting and bring it back, especially through the student council and through the school and friends and family in the town, to try to spread what Project 351's message and all of the things that they're offering. Thank you.
Again, Lily, thank you for all you're doing for us. We really appreciate it.
Lost it.
Back to you, I believe. Okay. Just want to close it out by thanking them, Mrs. Latender and Lily for being here, and Lily's parents, and congratulate you both. Obviously, you did a great job raising your daughter, and she's going to continue to grow. So, 8th grade now, and we look for great things in the future. So, thank you very much. Have a great year being the Project 351 ambassador.
Thank you.
Next up is reports from school committee members. Does anyone have anything they wish to mention? Then I will turn it over to our MEA co-presidents, who is just Sam today. I'm sorry, not Sam, it's Kate. Hi, Kate.
How's everybody doing? We're having some minor mishaps with no flag and collapsing tables. But
Table problems.
All right. Good evening. I would like to first start by thanking you for being proactive and canceling school for tomorrow ahead of this probably big storm. We have a lot of area in Middleborough to bus students around and quite a few staff that come from quite a distance, and I think it's a good decision. We've begun negotiating with, between the Middleborough Education Association and Middleborough Public Schools. We started with 7 hours of training in November, moved on to an initial meeting in December where we set up all of our guidelines for the professional contract, and we currently have 7 or 8, I guess 8 meetings scheduled from now through the end of March to work on our next contract together. And we are working together. I want to make sure that everybody understands that it is a collaborative event, that when we work on a contract like the last time we did it, we're doing it very collaboratively, and it makes for a much nicer process. Also want to report out that, it really has been challenging times in the first 70-some days of school. We are dealing with many absences of staff and students. We're trying to get our best educating done. Very difficult. I did a little research today. I have 23 students in my 5th grade class, and we've so far, just the students, been out 150 days. That's a lot. Very challenging. And I myself was out for 10 days for having COVID myself. So it has been tough, but we are pushing through. We're being very creative, using different spaces. The staff is coming together. The secretaries of the different schools are working really hard to get coverage for all the classes. The nurses are working extremely hard, under extremely hard conditions, trying to get students to test and stay and make sure that students that need to go home are going home. And I just really want to thank everybody for their hard work, everybody from from Brian Lynch down to the, every single position that is working so hard this year. It's been very challenging, but we are getting it done. I also, on the thank you note, would like to thank the volunteers and the staff and the superintendent and everyone who came out on Saturday to distribute, Mrs. Crawford, how many, like 275 kits? For our staff to test before we return to school on Monday, and that was really a good thing, and over a weekend, people giving up their time to do that, and we really do appreciate that. Let's see. I guess the last thing I wanted to say is finally on behalf of the Middleborough Education Association, I would like to congratulate Superintendent Lynch on his upcoming and well-earned retirement. I know I can remember being really happy and excited when back in 2015, I heard that he was going to be our superintendent. Both of my children attended the school named in honor of his father, the Lickety Lynch School, as all the little kindergartners called it. And I knew he'd have our best interests of the town students and everyone at heart when he returned to Middleborough after being an elementary teacher, an assistant principal, a headmaster, a principal, and I knew we'd be in good hands when he came back. He and I were recently talking about how he just is in the process of working his 4th year over his maximum retirement. So he's really dedicated, and negotiating for his last year is probably a lot of extra time and a lot of extra work, and we appreciate that. So thank you for your working with us for all these years, and we will miss you when you go, but you're leaving us in a really good position. I know you've accomplished a lot, including this lovely building that you helped get opened, and also I know you were really proud of your strategy for continuation of district improvement that you completed for the period of 2017 to 2022, and we're working through that now. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Kate. Appreciate it.
Anybody have any questions?
Anybody have any questions for Kate? Kate, thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm going to head home before the snow. I got an hour commute.
Don't blame me, Kate.
Drive safely.
Next up is Natalia. Natalia, welcome.
Thank you. So for this week, I don't have an update from the MEC or the HBB, but for the MKG is excited and ready to learn after the holiday break. They are diving back into reading, writing, science, and math. Many classrooms have been using their hands-on mystery science kit to support their learning of science topics. We encourage families to read together and practice their math skills at home. A reminder that January 14th is a full-day professional development day for staff, and there will be no school for students. Lastly, the staff will continue their learning in Lexia Core 5 and the Leslie Literacy Model. For Nichols Middle School, NMS sports are going well. The girls' basketball team won in overtime last night against Somerset. The boys' basketball team won their first game yesterday against Somerset 49-35. Congratulations to both teams. Winter intramurals started this week, and students can choose basketball or volleyball to participate in. The Nichols Middle School administrative team would like to give a shout out to the faculty and staff for their continuous support in helping out with coverage and supporting one another, especially during the past few weeks. The next GSA meeting is Monday, January 10th, right after school. Nichols Middle School proudly announces Lily Price as their Project 351 ambassador. Congratulations, Lily. And lastly, for MHS, the annual holiday party hosted by MHS Student Council was a great success. We want to congratulate Mrs. Descharnes's, Mrs. Tessino's, Mr. Fitzgibbons, and Mr. Boisbert's advisories on placing in the advisory door decorating contest. We also want to congratulate Jimmy Swartz for his completion of his Eagle Scout project at Pratt Farm. The following clubs will be taking place on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Key Club in room C149, GSA in room C158, and Yes Club in room C159. And lastly, the members of the National Honor Society are offering a program to all students in all classes, allowing for weekly meetings with a one-on-one tutor. This is a free tutoring opportunity. Please reach out to Mr. Goldman if you are interested.
Thank you very much, Natalia. Does anyone have any questions for Natalia? Thank you. We appreciate it, Natalia.
Thank you.
With that, I'll turn it over to the superintendent for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, once again, members of the audience. I have first on my update, a COVID-19 update, and I have some numbers that are a little startling a little bit. We know the Omicron variant has taken over our country and is spreading with rapid fire. I would give you the updates from my last meeting with the school committee on December 16th. If you recall, the number was 47 of active cases in the district. Just prior to the holiday, that had jumped to 65. That was as of December 22nd. And as of today, we're up to 106. So we're at 106. Just a reminder that we do have just about 3,000 students, and then we do have 450 or so faculty and staff. So it is a small percentage. However, it is significant, and we're doing everything we can to address it. And those are the numbers as they are in terms of they're growing, and hopefully we'll see a decrease after the holidays and after a couple of weeks. We're going to try to get creative with next week's professional development and looking at that possibly as nearly fully remote if we can for faculty, and do a deep clean 4-day weekend, and sort of get to that point where we're back to scrubbing areas and making sure things are super clean on the school's part, the facilities part. So we also, just an FYI, on December 30th, the Department of Public Health and Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed released protocols, updated protocols for responding to COVID-19, and they include that a bit of a controversial 5-day isolation period. It came down from 10 to 5 days with conditions, and the conditions are that somebody who's coming back from 5-day would have to be asymptomatic and continue active monitoring for symptoms for up to 10 days and isolate, adhere to strict mask guidance for an additional 5 days. It has been a bit controversial, as you know. It's been played out in the media for sure, but it is something that the DEAS and the DPH, the Department of Public Health and Department of Elementary Secondary Ed, have jointly issued and updated so that we are living by those protocols, and we will continue to live by those protocols. They also clarify the definition of fully vaccinated, and it does not include a booster. The definition of fully vaccinated just is the completion of a 2-shot Pfizer or Moderna or the 1-shot Johnson & Johnson. So they did some updating. Obviously, December 30th, that was over the break. Mrs. Magnasco did a bunch of work over the week, to update. We did approve some extra time for our nurses to get up to speed on the new protocols. They keep changing, and they seemingly keep changing. But as they do, we try to adapt and we'll continue to adapt. And if individuals have concerns with individual situations, they can certainly contact Mrs. Magnasco. She has been covering for a nurse all week. So she has been trying to get back to people. I saw that she responded to a couple of parents at 6 o'clock and 6:07 p.m. tonight. So we are trying to keep up with it and trying to keep up with the regulations as they keep changing. And that's where we're at with that right now. So I don't know if there are any questions from the committee.
Rich.
Sure.
The question I had that seemed to be most relevant to kind of logistics around the school is the part in this new DESE guidance about the days 6 through 10, and obviously the things you just mentioned, so I won't even go into that, but the 3-foot distancing piece about when you're in days 6 through 10, when you take off your mask to eat. And I was just wondering, how do we handle that? I know it's Thursday on the first week back, so we may not even, but I just wonder how we're handling that.
One of the frequently asked questions that came out from DEAS this afternoon, I think it was probably about 5 o'clock, was, can individuals returning from quarantine and isolation remove their masks to eat meals? Obviously, you need to. But it says, per the updated protocols, individuals returning from a 5-day isolation and quarantine must mask for an additional 5 days when around others, which all of our students in school, unless they're medically exempted, are doing. But like individuals participating in test and stay during meals, masks should only be removed when individuals are actively eating. Additional DEAS recommends a physical distance of at least 3 feet while eating, as feasible. This means masks must be worn when individuals are waiting for meals or sitting at lunch tables after meals are finished. So that's what we're trying to implement now and get that rolled out at our schools and trying to get that additional separation, especially for those individuals who are coming back after the 5, who are asymptomatic, and trying to tighten that up a little bit. There's no doubt about it. But this, you're right, this is the first week back. We're still getting used to these, and we'll deal with them as we move forward. And there have been questions from parents, and I know that Mrs. Magnasco has been getting back to people and trying to get back to people as much as she can. I know she was back and forth with Teresa this week about some questions that Teresa had. So we're trying to stay ahead of it and trying to understand it more as these sort of protocols for responding to COVID-19 continue to morph and change. And they could go backwards next week. We don't know. So we have to stay on top of it, but we're trying to do the best we possibly can. So.
Other questions? Go ahead, Rich.
Bit of an unrelated one to that. I guess the question really is the 107 number. I know it'll be posted tomorrow. I was curious if there's any way we can know how many of those numbers are, I guess by contact tracing, related to in-school transmission versus community.
A lot of these are from the holiday break. A lot of these are from home because the kids were home for 10, 11 days. So a lot of these did come from holiday gatherings and such, I'm sure. But we don't know really exactly where they came from. We can't trace that for sure. I know that the Department of Public Health is tracing it. They may have more information on that at the town level. But the numbers are fairly spread out in the district. We have 1 district-wide personnel. We have 9 cases at the MEC. We have 8 cases at the Berkland, and that's been reduced in half from the last report. So that has changed for the better. But Mary Kay Good is up to 31, Nichols Middle School is 23, and the high school is 34. We do have we have additional faculty members, increased numbers of faculty members after the testing prior to coming back, and hopefully we caught some folks that may not have been symptomatic but were positive, that didn't come back to school, and maybe we did save some numbers for down the road. But in the meantime, as Kate had mentioned, that it has been a bit of a struggle at the school level, covering for classes and making sure that we're doing the best we possibly can for every student in every classroom every day. So.
Mr. Chair, if it's okay, I just had a follow-up. I know obviously the CIC folks, I learned a little bit from Paula Magnasco, their scope is very narrow. It's not like they're helping out on a whole bunch of things. And then the nursing staff obviously has their hands full. For things like that, for learning about trends, would you recommend that would maybe be like a Board of Health question or something that I would direct towards our town health department?
Yes, in certain degrees, but the CIC is definitely working in our school system. That's the test and stay.
Oh, of course.
So that's would be a Paula Magnasco question or a school nurse question. But I would say that in terms of the test and stay protocols, that's strictly a school program, and that's not a town program.
Sorry, I meant in regards to trends. It's not like we have an epidemiologist just sitting
Oh,
around, so
yeah.
it'd probably be the town's health department, if anything.
I
right?
didn't have the town number for today. I don't know what it was yesterday, Rich. I know you had mentioned that the town number was
pretty high.
pretty significant. 475 in town?
Yeah, sorry, I'm saying it weird. I just mean to learn more about where the spread is coming from, or within school, outside of school. Is that more of a like health department
Yes.
thing? Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, that would be, yeah.
Okay.
But I would say that, given the nature of the variant, that a lot of this happened, a lot of the current active cases are as a result of the week that we were out, if you will. So,
Great, thank you.
yep.
Other questions? Seeing nobody? Anybody have a question in the audience? Go right ahead.
Have we had any reports of anybody with severe illness, moderate illness, or mostly we're just dealing with sniffles still?
I think there have been a couple of individuals who have had more of a significant bout than others.
Hospitalized?
I believe so, yes.
Adults or children?
Children.
Oh, we've had hospitalized children. And
I
now,
can't get into individual cases, but
I didn't ask individual,
Yep.
that's not an individual, that has nothing to do with anybody's privacy, so it is important to know if we're having hospitalized children. From what I'm understanding on the news, they're often being hospitalized for other things, and then they're testing positive for COVID and they're asymptomatic, so they're inflating the numbers in the news. So it's important to
can't comment on
understand
that.
all the variables that are going on right now, so So you're not sure that there's been any hospitalized children with severe illness from our school community?
There have been,
There have been.
yes.
For COVID that are severe?
I don't know the details of the medical cases, nor have I asked.
Oh, so then that's not really an accurate answer. So your answer is you're not sure. Okay,
I'm not sure, but I know that we've had individuals hospitalized.
okay. So it does sound like this virus, from my understanding, is doing what viruses do and becoming less virulent, although more transmissible, which is a good thing. Hopefully we start seeing a lot of little infections and these kids can get through it and then have some natural immunity, which will be nice. So I do expect that we'll probably see some increase in numbers as, lots of kids get these sniffles. And it's good that they're mild at this point because, the kids were already not being severely impacted, but now we're seeing, just sniffles across the board for most people with this strain. So I just wanted to point out that that's really great news, that we're going in that direction. And I was understanding what you were kind of looking for, Mr. Oakley. I thought the same thing, like, while we can't ever say where somebody gets something or not something, you could assume that your friend you ate dinner with gave you coronavirus, but really you could have got it from somebody at Target, or from touching the cart or whatever. You don't really ever really know, but I would think
We don't know.
Nobody ever really knows. So it's a lot of effort in all the contact tracing to not really be certain. But obviously the test and stay would be the good indicator of whether you were getting a lot of in-school transmissions, which is what I thought you were looking for. Like, are you getting a lot of resulting close contact positives that would tell us that we're seeing a lot of in-school spread? So I understood that you were looking for whether we were seeing this. Obviously, coming off of a week break, I agree, the kids are, and adults are all, it was from where they weren't here. So I understood what you were looking for too, and that's what I've been wondering also. But so far, I haven't heard really that there's been much positive results from testing all the kids that were having these, all these close contact positives. So you don't know that either?
I don't have that number.
I mean, I feel like if they're running this test and stay program, you would think that CIC would have that data, and that would be part of the data, because it is informational and helps guide how you're doing things, but it's like you're kind of doing something, but then not using any of that relevant, important information to make decisions moving forward. So without that, it does seem like something that would be helpful, although, again, we're looking at colds and sniffles, which we see every year, and if nobody ever counted how many colds and sniffles we had and how many kids were hospitalized for flu in the past, I'm sure we could, but we just don't know that, because this could be a normal cold and flu season compared to 3 years ago or 4 years ago or 5 years ago, and everybody's counting now, so it looks like there's this trend going up, but really could just be the same as it was every other year when we see cold and sniffles. Same with hospitalizations, because we do see kids more severely affected by flu than we have from COVID. But that was it. Thanks. Oh, Mr. Young, you're going to make sure it's on the next time, because I don't want to keep delaying this.
And I apologize, it was sent to our secretary to make sure it was put on.
Okay, thanks, because it just drags out. I don't know that it's, you guys, maybe you will have some brilliant answers and you were able to decipher what Desi's letter meant to tell us, but I'm not hopeful for that, but I would like to see what the board thought of their letter, so that would be great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I had two things. One is just a comment on your comment. I do feel like characterizing the infections that the children get as cold and sniffles is a little as inflammatory maybe as saying that the numbers are getting adversely documented or adversely publicized in the news. If kids are being hospitalized and they have COVID, that does take the space and the time and the care in hospitals that could be potentially used for something else. So I don't think the increase of children being hospitalized is ever a good thing, regardless of what is causing it. So I just wanted to note that. Mr. Lynch, I did have a question in one of your comments related to the change in the number of isolation days. You said that for the children to return, they have to be asymptomatic. I believe if I read everything correctly, it is the symptoms have to be improving, fever-free, absolutely, and following whatever other rules are already in place for return to school after any illness. But I believe, if you still have a cough, if you still have any of the other symptoms, then as long as they are improving, you are allowed to return to school. So I just wanted to clarify that point.
I can definitely clarify that with the nurse tomorrow.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Any other questions? Then we're all set, Brian. You can move on.
Okay, we'll move on to the 2022-2023 school calendar. It right now is a blank page before you. I know that we have a midterm election, and I think we need to certainly pay attention to that. We certainly have to pay attention to Juneteenth as we move forward. And this is sort of the introductory look at this calendar. So you can sort of, as school committee members, certainly have a discussion this evening, but start to mark this calendar up with your own thoughts so that we can get into a deeper discussion at the next meeting. And I would certainly defer to the chair for any further comment on that.
So my suggestion would be everyone send their comments to Ann and Brian, and we'll put it in, as we've done in the past, put it in sort of sample form so that people could take a look at it in the different ways. I would also add, as Brian said, the other thing I should put out, we are in negotiations, so there could be changes to next year's based on something that happens in negotiation, whether or not I know that happens, but it has in the past. So those type of things. Good.
Mr. Chair, I know that we kind of lucked out with the way things scheduled this school year, where normally we're not necessarily able to carve out any of the Jewish holidays, but we did manage to cover at least one, I know, or at least one day. And if we happened into such a circumstance again, I think it sounded like it was pretty appreciated by folks around town. So,
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, the discussion was the first day of school starting on a holiday. And it was a concern, and that's why we discussed it and put it out there. So I'd be interested to see how that plays out too.
Sure.
So I agree.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, thank you.
So last time it happened right as our first day of school, and some parents expressed concern that essentially their child would be out the very first day of school. And that's why we just moved it that way. Any other questions or comments about that particular piece? And so if you have any sort of, I think Ann put it together in sort of just a format that we've used in the past. If you have any hard feelings either way, send it to Ann and Brian so that we make it out.
And Mr. Chair and members of the committee, if you can recall, what we do with this is sort of a 2-3 meeting process here, but we'll do a draft 2, then we'll do a draft 3, then we'll do a draft 4, and then we'll sort of vote on final draft, basically when folks are happy with it. So, but we also put it out there for public input, and we've done that before too. So that would be obviously something that would be up to the school committee, but I would certainly recommend that.
And we have put it out as in the past, we put it out at different times and different dates that we're starting or ending or things like that. And so if there are multiple ideas, we'll put that out so people can comment on them too. That has worked in the
Yep.
past.
Thank you. Next on my report, if there are no further questions on the calendar, is my facilities update. And I know that Hutch was here the last meeting, and basically after that meeting, we had a roof leak that had been going on for some time, apparently at the Mary Kay Good School, which we hadn't discovered until part of a roof basically collapsed the last day before holiday break. So that afternoon, the kids had left. Facilities director was checking boilers, noticed that a little part of a ceiling had fallen down. It started to fall down more. We had the insurance company immediately come in, determine that it was a result of a roof leak. We got the roof leak cell set fixed. And we were able to go into sort of emergency mode with DCAM and with the state. because this is a sensitive room with 3 boilers going all day long to heat up the entire Mary K. Good School. The room has electricity through it. It has gas lines, obviously, with this heavy, heavy concrete ceiling that was starting to fall apart. So we were able to contract with AP Whitaker. It was an insurance job. We'll be paying the deductible, thank you very much. We'll have to pay a deductible, but this is probably, the job goes over 6 figures. It's an expensive job. And they're doing a heck of a job on it, AP Whitaker out of West Bridgewater. We were able to contact, when I sat down with Hutch, we were talking about, because he was getting frustrated with trying to find local folks that might be able to do this job because it was so big. So we called Rob DeRozier, who was a structural engineer, who was also chairman of the building committee for this program, and he suggested AP Whitaker. AP Whitaker had also built the police station, and they were what came right down and immediately responded and said they could do the job and they could have the ceiling down and the room secure and safe for student occupation for the day after the holiday, which was our main goal. So we signed on with them, got approval at the state level, and that room is now secure, safe, boilers are working, everything's working fine, and they're just redoing the lighting. This afternoon, they were working on the fire alarm and making sure the fire alarm that went through that building, connected to all the boilers, was all set. They did some testing this afternoon. I believe that was successful. So that's sort of a facilities update since the last update, but kind of an important one. And you know, sometimes things happen for a reason at a certain time. And when you have an early release day and that afternoon, a little piece of chunk, then all of a sudden it starts to break down more. That could have been a real issue, trying to find a place for 625 students for a week or two. So we were fortunate unfortunate it happened, but fortunate it happened when it did happen. So, any questions on that?
I just want to point out to everybody too, that it happened the day before break. And so to make sure there was no damage or no continued damage, Hutch was here every day, including Christmas Day, to go into that room and make sure everything was okay. And he constantly checked on that place. And so I do want to thank Hutch for his hard work and dedication. Good, sir.
So I would like to speak to that as well. This was my first experience at emergency procurement. And of course, when I'm having my first experience with a big deal like this, I reach out to my mentor, and so I was sitting in my office on Christmas Eve day, working on the letter for the emergency waiver for DCAM, and she said to me, is there asbestos in the ceiling? And I said to her, no, there isn't. So this incident happened, and Hutch knew immediately that that was something to look out for, and he had it tested, and he had the results that morning, so that when I went forward, I knew what I was going forward with, not dealing with asbestos mediation, but just going forward with a ceiling repair.
Which was of major importance, and Hutch had that tested that afternoon.
Right.
And he had the test results back for the morning, so that we could then inform any construction company or anybody, because we'd have to empty out that building at that point. And relocate employees because of what's called friability. Once it's something that fiber starts to break down, we're fortunate that it came up zero. This was something that was done as a project after asbestos findings had come out. So we're very happy with that.
And I'm happy that he had had the forethought to think of that right off the bat.
Yep.
I just had a question regarding the deductible. And so is that like a contingency fund that you have, or is that a town fund that pays that?
Probably come out of our facility rental.
Okay.
We had a similar project back when I first started where we had some moisture mitigation that had to be done at the Berkman School. As you recall, there was a lot of discussion about mold and such when we discovered where that was occurring and how it was occurring, thanks again to Rob DeRozier, that we were able to come in and bring in a company to do that work. And we did have to, I think at the time, pay a $10,000 deductible. But we paid that out of facility rental and facility usage, which we had money coming in from the School Street project. We don't anymore right now, but we have money that continues to come in from the Massasoit project. So we do have money in that account. We have the ability to pay that. That's not something that we expect the town to pay.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. First, is there any way we can turn off Hutch's badge for the weekend or holidays? But on a more serious note, is there someone coming up behind Hutch so someday when he doesn't feel like being in here on Christmas Day, we have someone to take his place.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, you know, we can't say enough about Jim Hutchinson and the work he does and
Yep.
the time he spends here and you know, chasing after alarms and anything else, roof leaks and boiler leaks and things such as that. So there are younger people in the district, I think, who are capable, who could be capable, and he sees that in some of these people and tries to develop it in leadership. Young people getting jobs such as said custodians early on that have shown that they're willing, ready, and able to do things and go on to get additional commissions and licenses. And so I think he recognizes that in people because he knows he's not going to be around forever. But in the meantime, we got to try to keep him happy.
Yeah, hopefully not for a long
But
time.
he was also on the team of people who were handing out kits the other day. So, you know, there's another demonstration, you know, and so it's just Hutch. I hate to say it that way, but it's just Hutch. That's what he does. And if Fontaine Brothers out of Chicopee building the high school didn't have Jim Hutchinson, I don't know where they'd be, because he was always here catching up with flying styrofoam and whatever, so it didn't go into neighbors' houses, and so we have a lot of great things to say about Jim Hutchinson. So
Very lucky.
yeah, no doubt about it.
Thank you.
We've also, like, through Hutch, one of the things that we've done sort of differently is, unlike lots of districts, our custodial staff all have certain licenses. We brought people on who have plumbing licenses, who have HVAC licenses, who have electrical licenses, so that outsiders are not doing that work in these buildings. They are. It has saved us a considerable amount of money over a period of time. It was well worth the investment.
Yeah, that's something that's been in place in the Middleborough Public Schools for a long time. A licensed plumber, a licensed electrician, and it's HVAC was something we brought in 2016, I think, when we brought in Howie Bumpus, and it's great to have him on board. You know, he knows our machines, especially with COVID, and making sure all those machines are up and running and clean, and all those, as Hutch had mentioned, all of those filters have been replaced over the break, and so we're very fortunate to have that triumvirate, if you will, in the maintenance staff. And Hutch refers to Scotty Beach as MacGyver, because he's one of those guys, he's an electrician, but he's also a carpenter, he can do anything, so, which is great. So kudos to our maintenance staff, and kudos to our custodial staff, no doubt about it. So if there are no other questions, I'll move on here. Another facilities issue that's been something that has been unresolved for a couple of years here, because we haven't had the money to do it, has been the Memorial Early Childhood Center chiller replacement up on the roof. And we've been without AC in the summer there for some time. But we've addressed that, and I'm going to introduce Sarah Hickey to talk about that project and where we are in that project and where we've been and where we're going. Sarah Hickey.
Thank you, Superintendent Lynch and school committee members. First off, I want to say I started with a sinus infection back on Monday, December 20th, and so I have a tickle in the back of my throat. I have taken multiple COVID tests. I took one Tuesday night. I take them on a regular basis. I know I've been coughing a lot. I do not have COVID. I'll be testing, I'll be continued testing. So thank you for being patient with me on that. The money that came in from the federal government for the ESSER was part of what we were allowed to do with it is HVAC, upgrading HVAC systems, and getting the chiller working at the MAC is exactly what that is getting the air moving properly during 6 months out of the year in that building. And so when that was approved with the ESSER 2 grant, we contracted with an engineer that has worked with Middleborough Public Schools on a number of projects in the past, and he had put together the specifications for the project, and then he and Hutch and I worked on putting together the bid, and because this is a six-figure contract that we're awarding, it requires following certain procedures to meet requirements of state law. So we put the project bid documents available to anybody who was interested in them on December 9th. Held a meeting at the MEC a walkthrough to show anyone who was interested in bidding on the project, what things looked like and what they were bidding on. The sealed bids were due on December 29th, and then I gave the documentation for the 3 lowest bidders. I told the people at the bid meeting, I said, I have a degree in mathematics, and I'm running the bid meeting, but I don't know anything about HVAC. So after we recorded the bids, the information for the 3 lowest bidders went to the engineer. And so I'd like to thank Ann Gagnon as well, because this wasn't on the school committee agenda until today, because the information came in to me today from the engineer who had reviewed the bid documents from the 3 lowest bidders, checked the references for those 3 lowest bidders, and made a recommendation that the town award the contract to Enterprise Equipment Company out of Weymouth in the amount of $173,488. And so I bring this to you tonight, hoping that you can approve this award so that I can send out the award letter to the company. So just one of the intricate pieces about this is there is pretty much a 14-week lead time now on actually getting the equipment. So we're contracting in January for a chiller replacement to be done in May, because it's going to take that long for them to get the equipment ordered and on site. So.
And part of the problem was if we waited, we could have pushed it back even further, because the 14 weeks is them ordering next week the materials. So it seems like an emergency at this point. So for purpose of discussion, Chair would entertain a motion to make the award.
So moved for discussion.
Yep, do I have a second? Second. Discussion.
I have a question.
Sure.
So if I understood you, you said there were 3 low bids. And so that bid that was chosen may not have been the lowest bid, but it was the best bid out overall. So someone looked at it and said, based on everything they're telling us they're going to do, we think this is still the best cost-effective way to do it, even if it's a few $1,000s or however much more than the second one or the third one. Is that correct?
So an invitation for bids is different from a request for proposals. A request for proposals, you can put qualifications on it and not go with the lowest bidder. With an invitation for bids, we're required to go with the lowest qualified bidder. And so we had 7 bidders.
Mm-hmm.
We had received 7 bids for this contract, and the engineer took the bid documents from the 3 lowest bidders and went through and checked that they meet all the requirements of certification through the state, and actually had the experience that we were looking for. Again, I have a degree in mathematics. I don't know much about chillers, even though it was very chilly the day we did the walkthrough.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Mr. Chair? So my question is, you mentioned the invitation to bid versus an RFP process. And I think I understood you that the invitation to bid, we're required to do that because of the size of the project. Is that right, as opposed to an RFP?
No, when we're purchasing anything over $50,000,
Yep.
we have or when we're procuring a contract or getting goods and services, we're required to do either an invitation for bids or a request for proposal. The request for proposal is not appropriate in all circumstances. You really want to do a request for proposal when there are specific things where you want to say, this makes you highly desirable as a bidder. We didn't have, we didn't have anything like that. There are set specifications for This is what is an acceptable device for you to purchase, install, and
okay.
install. And there's not any gradation of that.
I see.
So that's why it was an invitation for bids.
Got it. That's very helpful. And so the specifications of the chiller were put out there, and so anyone that answered this particular invitation to bid is going to provide that chiller? Is that basically what it is?
Well, we'll provide a chiller
That
that will
meets the-
meet those specifications.
Got it. Got it.
And just to be clear and so everybody understands, there were 3 low bidders. The engineer takes a look at the 3 low bidders to help find the qualified low bidder. It just so happens that our qualified low bidder is in actuality the company that bid the lowest amount. Okay, so the second bidder was off by 1,000, and the third bidder was off by about $10,000. So he's chosen the lowest bidder as the low qualified bidder. And I think if you look at sort of,
Recommending that.
right, if you look at his recommendation, what I've seen in the past as far as qualified is if they're not taking the lowest bidder, then he would give Sarah an explanation as to why he chose someone else. He
And a lot of
looked
that is based on references.
Right. He looked at all the references. All the references for all these 3 people came in fine. Everything came in fine. So at that point, he picked the lowest bidder.
Right.
Any other questions? Rich, go ahead.
Sorry, just one more question on that. So the equipment's pretty static. We know that we're going to get something that meets our specifications. The references came back great. The money's lower. Is there anything else? Or the engineer took care of that. SED is the one that really vetted them. So
Yes.
what we're really being asked to do right now is to just approve going with enterprise equipment. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay. And just to add on to that, I remember that this past summer, things weren't so great for a little bit in the mech. So I think this would be a nice thing to do right now, especially since completion sounds like it would happen right as we're starting to get warm.
Yes.
So, okay, thank you. That's
Yeah,
it for me.
If you do recall, and we have the extended school year program in that building. So that's obviously something of concern. And obviously, people work and students go to that building, and if we can provide it as soon as possible, that's the best thing we can do.
So just related to that too, just so everyone understands, when you choose the lowest qualified bidder, if they're not the lowest, there is for the lowest bidder the right to appeal the decision. It's hard in this case because this is the lowest bidder. We went through this a lot in this building. As you can imagine, there were literally thousands of contracts that went out for a wide variety of services. And so our project teams would pick the lowest qualified bidder, and on a few occasions, they were not the lowest price for a variety of reasons. And they in turn had the opportunity to appeal certain things. And I think 1 or 2 did, am I correct in that assumption? And so we went through that process. So it would be hard here because it is the lowest bidder.
In the larger projects, we do have an owner project manager who would sort of coordinate this. But this is one of those projects that we did as a district by ourselves, and we were able to coordinate it through SED, with Marty, the engineer that we've used before, we've used him in the past. And he has good references too, so.
Any questions from the audience? Seeing none. A motion on the table is to approve the award. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you. And Sarah
Thank
is
you,
going to
Sarah.
move on with a budget update and a bus contract update.
Thank you. So it's budget season, so I'll be talking to you about budget every time I see you until we have our budget hearing on February 17th. I just want to let you know that I'm at the point where everybody has submitted their requests. All the directors and principals have submitted their requests to me. I am aggregating all the data, putting together the information that will create what we call the budget book. I'm hoping to have that complete for next Wednesday when we meet with the admin team. I'm hustling to get that done for Wednesday so we can have a preview. I will tell you with complete confidence that this document that I'm putting together, because it just has a list of everybody's requests, is probably going to be well in excess of what the town manager will give us, because that's the way it is every year, that we ask for more than what we're given, and so then we have to make some decisions in the budget subcommittee meetings about priorities and such. But right now, I have a list of wants and needs, and so I'm putting that all together, and then we have to start whittling that down to the needs. I expect we'll get our budget number from the town manager in a few weeks. I don't know his timeline for me. Are any questions about budget?
Just a quick question. I'm not on the budget subcommittee this year. I think I might try to make a meeting or two anyways. But one thing that I found incredibly helpful that you did last time, that if you could do it on all of them would be awesome, was a percent change from previous year. Because with such a huge, vast world of requests, it's so hard to take a quick look and say what's standing out here, and that percent change was so helpful that you did. So just a vote for that.
Well, you're absolutely guaranteed that was the column that was put in my spreadsheet after the meeting with the selectmen last year.
Yep.
Because I actually had a clerical error on an entry
I remember.
that we didn't catch, and I was so embarrassed to have a math error. And had I had a percent change for that, I would have noticed a 3,000% increase. And so that column is already on that sheet, has been on the sheet since last March.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other questions about budget itself? Seeing no.
Move on to bus contract.
So the last thing I'm going to talk to you tonight about is the bus contract. As you recall from previous years, we've had a conversation about extending the contract with First Student. So just a little history for anyone who is newer. We had a 3-year contract with First Student that had 2 option years on it. So in the spring of 2020, we voted to exercise the first year option, the 4th year option of the contract. And then last year, we voted to exercise the 5th year contract option for the contract. So contracts, we can only award contracts for 3 years. And so that's pretty standard for how a bus contract is. So we've had our 3-year bus contract plus our 2 option years, and I will be going out to bid with the bus contract. I'm working on putting the bid documents together. I'll be going out to bid on the bus contract probably, I was going to say mid-February, but realistically, I'm doing a budget presentation for you mid-February. So that will probably be my February vacation project, and go out to bid the week after February vacation.
So just a couple of quick things about the bus contract, just so people know. In the past, we've used a consultant for the bus contract, whom we can't use anymore because he was hired by a bus company.
Right.
And so we are using our attorney, who's helped us out with particular bus contracts in the past. So I just wanted everyone to know that. That's
in addition to that, I have been meeting with a number of school business managers around the area that we're all going out to bid on our bus contracts. So we've been working together on that, and I do have confidence in our transportation coordinator, who's worked in the busing industry for years, and she's helping me out, and will look at the bus documents with me, the bus bid documents with me. So it's not me with my math degree just going into this blind.
Go ahead, Rich.
What are the, I know First Student, obviously. What are are there other big companies out there that are, where we would expect to get a bid from, probably?
I have gotten, I can't remember their names off the top of my head. I've gotten phone calls from 2 other companies. One of them was very straightforward and said to me, we plan on going out to, we plan on bidding on your contract. So, and called me and asked me for the timeline.
Got it.
I don't recall.
Lucini.
It was not Lucini.
What about Bloom?
It was not, It's somebody who has a lot of contracts down on the Cape.
Okay.
There are a number of companies out there, Amaral, Bloom, yeah, so.
So one of the things too, just so everyone knows and to think about as we go forward, there are local regional companies and then there are national companies. So First Student's a national company, they have branches all over. And so they offer different things. And so that's the important piece. I will also add that the good news is one thing that shouldn't cost us as for an increase is, and that in the course of this contract, we made it so that our buses had to be a certain length of, it couldn't be longer than X years old. And in fact, we got a whole fleet of new buses that were given to us as no additional charge. So it greatly moved up even what we had set for our buses could be certain age. Most of our buses are within the last 3 to 5 years, which is unusual for a school system. Rich, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just going to ask how long we've had, I know you mentioned the current contract that we have, but how long have we had First Student as a supplier, or vendor rather?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Okay.
First Student, I believe, was here when I got here, so it's been at least 8 to 10 years. Bob, how long, was First Student around when you were here? Yes. Okay, so First Student has been around for quite some time.
10 years, I think, at least.
10 years plus, that neighborhood.
And then just one last one, and then I'm done. The fact that we're contracting with a company to provide bus services means that the drivers of those buses are not employees of our district, but they are employees of the company that provides that contract. Okay, thank you.
Think of it as similar to the contract that I'll be sending out tonight to replace the chiller. We're contracting with a vendor. They have employees that will come do the work.
Thank you.
And just to be clear on that, one of the things especially with the chiller is as part of the contract, everybody has to be Corey checked.
Yes.
And they have to be approved by the superintendent before they come anywhere near our building.
Got it.
And so I know that's been a long, especially here, it has been an extraordinarily hard work for Ann to have to go through the number of people we've had in this building while it was being contracted because it was so close to us.
Well, what I will tell you about the chiller project, if you walk around the MEC building, if you stand in front of the MEC building, there's it seems like a tunnel that goes through towards Battis Field. And when you go underneath that breezeway tunnel, on the right-hand side, exterior to the building is the chiller that we're talking about. On the left-hand side is the door into the boiler room. The boiler room connects, next to the boiler room is the electrical room, and there's probably a 20-foot hallway with the doorway to the boiler room to the electrical room. So we're going to be quarrying all the employees because at some point they may walk along that 20-foot hallway between those two rooms, but the bulk of the work is done exterior of the building.
But they'll be on school grounds, so
Yep.
they'll be quarried.
Yeah, about the buses. The buses are owned by the town and you contract for the drivers, or are the buses supplied as part of the contract?
The bus contract is kit and caboodle. The buses come with it, the drivers come with it, the drivers' benefits, the drivers' pay. Everything is contracted out. That's why we pay upwards of $3 million a year almost for that contract, so.
So if there was a new vendor, they would have to adhere to the same, buses can only be so old process.
Yeah, there would be
so-
there would be specifications for what we expect, and people would have to meet those specifications, and if they didn't, they'd be disqualified as bidders.
And then they maintain that age of bus, so
Yes.
if one will age out, they'll have to replace it.
Exactly.
And then my other question was, since you gave so many great details about how the bidding process works for the chiller, just curious, in this instance, how does the bidding process work differently when you have an existing vendor as opposed to when you have, like for the chiller, we don't have somebody to do the work, so it's not replacing somebody. or potentially replacing somebody. Is the bidding process different when you have a current vendor that you're working with? Or did the current vendor, if they want to keep you, just have to cross their fingers and hope they lowball it?
So the bidding process is required by state law, and it is really in order to promote fair and open competition. So we have a relationship with First Student, and we've been very happy with First Student over the years. However, we can't just give them a contract every year. And so the bidding process is designed by state law in order to allow anybody who has the capability of doing the work to put in an offer. And then the requirements for bus transportation is that it has to be an invitation for bid. And
But
so
does, so does First Student get to wait until all the other bids are in and say, can I top it? Or are they just
do
putting it out
not.
there and hoping that they are
The-
within the lowest?
the bid will post,
Okay.
and everybody will have an opportunity to read all of the documents and the specifications for the bid. And then the bid opening all happens at the same time. So for example, with the mech chiller, the bids were due at 2:00 in the afternoon on December 29th, and at 2:00 in the afternoon, I sat in a room and they were all opened and recorded. The same thing will happen
Okay.
with the bus bids. There'll be a deadline for the bids to be submitted. There'll be a bid opening. I'm going to call it a ceremony, even though it wasn't very exciting. So there'll be a bid opening ceremony and a recording of the bids. And then what will be different with the bus bid is I won't have to submit everything to the engineer.
Okay, so there's no preference given to the current vendor?
There is not.
And the bids are all sealed when they come in.
Yep. Thank you for clarifying. I just
Yeah.
was interested because you made it also interesting for the chiller project.
And then, just even though you didn't ask this question, I'm going to answer it. We actually have a bus contract with First Student for our regular education students. We have a separate transportation department that does specialized transportation. So yes, we as a district do own some buses and some minivans, and we do some transportation of students.
And so those are for like the students who might have to be bussed out of district for qualified reasons. And so that process won't change with this process. It's just those that are outside of the special contract.
Right, there's not a plan to change that at
Okay.
this moment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The other thing I should point out too is when they open the bids, generally speaking, everybody's there who bid because they want to see what other people bid. You will also hear immediately, so if somebody bid, say the chiller price, if you get the chiller price and you realize that your competitor bid $35,000 less than you, then the first thing they ask Sarah is, I want a copy of the bid, because they're going to go through the bid and look at it and try to figure out how they screwed up, because they want to challenge that bid. Because they know the prices. They understand if you're 1,000 off, if you're a couple of bucks off here and there. But you'll see sometimes extraordinarily big gaps in what you're asking to bid.
Between the second and the third for the chiller is like $10,000 difference.
Right.
Pretty big gap.
But to be honest with you, $10,000 is not a giant gap. Where we've, like, when we did the bids for the after-school and before-school program, those bids were huge, from $50,000 to $60,000 in gaps. So that's where it, you start looking at that, and you have to look at. Again, where the current bidder always has some sort of edge is they understand the route. So they know going in, I'm going to need X amount of bus routes, X amount of drivers. They know exactly what they need because of what they can and can't do. They can understand if they can cut routes or lower routes and explain why. So they have that opportunity. They've done it. They know what they're getting into. And again, when you see giant gaps, then they'll be like, that person can't do that, and they'll outline why, and they'll be ready to sort of challenge the bid if they need to.
And then with the chiller bid, I met with the engineer today, and while he was with me, we called the vendor that was the lowest bidder and asked him, were there any clerical errors, or was the number actually his correct number? And he was very enthusiastic and said, yes, there were no clerical errors, and he understands that there's a timeline we're trying to meet, and he's very excited, and it's because there were no clerical errors that this person was moved forward. They're the lowest bidder, their lowest qualified bidder, and they confirmed that they didn't make an error.
That's awesome. Any other questions about bus contracts? Seeing none. Turn back to you. Thank you very much. So next item on the agenda is superintendent search, and I said that I would come together with some information for everybody and sort of a recommendation moving forward. I will tell everybody this, I don't know if this is a good thing or not. This will be my 6th superintendent search. I did 2 as a school committee member in Avon, and I've done 4 here in Middleborough, 2 as a school committee member, and now 2 as an average citizen. So I've been on the last 4 superintendent searches for Middleborough in some capacity. So I think I have a good understanding of what happens. So in thinking over and having a conversation with the superintendent, I really fundamentally believe that the superintendent's done an excellent job in bringing on administrators and growing administrators that we currently have in the school system. I think we possess qualified candidates currently who have consistently shown their ability to all of us. The last superintendent search, that was one of the first questions I got on shortly after that current superintendent's contract wasn't renewed. And that was the first question I asked, and I had asked the committee if they thought there was any internal candidates, and at the time they said no. So that wasn't the case, but I believe Brian has done an excellent job in choosing people for administrative roles and adding working with people who've already been in those roles. We have several candidates who would currently meet most superintendent search requirements. I will tell you, sort of as a background, there are a number of vacancies in our area. Off the top of my head, there are 3 currently going on right now in Bellingham, Barnstable, and Freetown, Lakeville. Some just finished up in Stoughton and North Attleboro. Dighton, Rehoboth, and the superintendent and I know about an additional 3 or 4 more that will be in our area coming up. I believe by allowing internal candidates first and us to see who those are, it saves money in the long run and it saves time. We'd have to go through a process to hire and review a search firm. I would not recommend to this committee, if we were not doing internal candidates, to not hire a search firm. There's a wide variety of reasons for that, and I can get into it if that's what the committee so desires. Realistically, given the time frames, we would not really be making a decision till the end of the school year or the beginning of next school year, depending on how it plays out with search firms and their abilities. And then on top of that, whoever we hired would have to give notice in their district, which is typically at least 2 months. Just to be clear, while that's typical, our superintendent has a 1-year notification in his, so just to put that up. And in any way, shape, or form in June, if this continued past June, we'd have to hire an intern for that period of time. I would tell you all that it's not unique. I was previously served in the school committee in Avon, and my last time on the school committee, we and the superintendent believed we had found a superintendent candidate who would, out of his ranks, and so we mirrored his and her contracts, so she had a contract a year longer than he did. She became superintendent after him and served 10 years as a superintendent. So it worked out pretty well. Again, I can't emphasize enough the quality of our internal candidates. Just so everyone knows, I have no idea who would or wouldn't apply internally. I just know there are good internal candidates. I did have a conversation with leadership team that this was going to be my recommendation to the committee. And so I asked them prior to the break to really think about if they would apply. Again, I don't know who will apply or who wants to apply. I just know we have good candidates, and I really believe in them. If we hired somebody now through that process internally, it would allow that person to jump on hiring whatever their position would be open. And so we could start that process before the end of the school year and thus bring in candidates earlier. They would have a far better understanding of budget for next year and negotiations than any other candidate outside the district. Also, the new superintendent could work with Brian through the remainder of this school year to get up to date. I think the biggest thing I will tell you that we found is there's always a learning curve, not just to be superintendent, but about the district. Learn how to deal with the district. This really stops that. Clearly, again, it would save time, money, and I also think that's important as staff leaves for the year to know who their superintendent's going to be. And I think that's important. So that's my rationale for this recommendation to you, and I am open to questions you may have or any thoughts you might have. Teresa, go ahead.
I agree. I think that anytime you can hire internally, I think it's a good thing. It gives your staff a little more incentive to continue to move forward with their certifications or whatever that might look like. And I mean, obviously you need the right candidates, but I think you always start there. It doesn't mean we have to do it, that we have to hire someone, but I think we start there. And if we find that we have a qualified candidate, then that's great. And if not, then we move forward. But I would definitely agree that that is where we start.
Go ahead.
So if I heard you right, Mr. Chair, if we went the search firm route, that I think you had said that there wouldn't be a decision made until June, and then if we decided on someone from an outside district, they'd have to give an additional.
That's potentially. So just so everyone understands what has to happen. I would have to get 3 different search firms to give me 3 separate pieces that I'd have to present to the committee. We'd have to choose based on that. Mm-hmm. Then I'd have to do an award letter. I'd have to do that at a meeting. I have to approve. Generally speaking, when we worked with search firms in the past, after that's over, so let's take a best case scenario. And the best case scenario is that I could get 3 I don't even know if I could get 3 to give me estimates by next meeting, let's say the first meeting in February. So that's the first meeting in February. I'm not going to have them come to the second meeting in February because it's a budget hearing, so we got to deal with budget. So that means the first meeting in March. In March, they would come and express and outline what their plan was. Generally speaking, their plan includes a lot of different things, meeting with the committee, going over what you want in a superintendent, everything like that. It's a longer process, again, because you're dealing with candidates who don't. Then they would get resumes in. They would meet with the search committee that we developed and whittle down the resumes to about 10. I think last time we had about 12 people come in for interviews. That was whittled down to 4 that went to the school committee. Prior to that, school committee met at each of the four candidates' workplaces. And we planned essentially a day or a half day, if you will, and went over things that we wanted from there. And then met with the candidates in a separate meeting on a Friday night, interviewed all the candidates, and then made a decision. So given all that, I really don't think, I'm really thinking it's sometime over the summer. And like I said, when let's say hit July and August, then you got to give them time at their old district. So that's the hard part.
So if it's okay if I just respond, I think, given the vacancies that we know are gonna be open, and all of the competition that will bring, it seems like it would be, in our best interest to look internally. And I think, organizations choose to look externally when they need to shake things up or when they feel like they're not headed in a good direction. And I personally feel like, we're headed in a pretty good direction. We just need some continuity, and I would totally be in favor of internal candidates. But my question is, we don't currently have any applications that we necessarily know about. Do we set like a date that we need to get interested applications by?
Yeah.
Okay. 'Cause-
So that would be the next thing. I just want to make sure I want to make sure the committee understands what I want to do, and then establish a date and move on from there.
Yeah.
So it's my feeling, and again, I can't emphasize this enough, although the process that I laid out to you is drawn out and intricate, I wouldn't have any problem doing that if I thought that was the right thing to do. I can't emphasize enough that I truly believe in the people who work in this district. They're fantastic. I've had the opportunity to work as a committee member in 2 different districts. I've also had the opportunity to work with schools in a wide variety of settings. And as everyone knows, I spend a lot of time with other school committee members at various places. I'll stack our group up against anybody. I think they're excellent. They consistently do fantastic work. In a lot of ways, I get to see it in other ways, in sort of day-to-day life that you guys don't. But I wouldn't sit up here and say that this is the right thing to do if we didn't have people who were like that. And that's what I really mean. So yeah, so I'm still open to other questions or thoughts if people have. Rich, go ahead.
Sure. I guess the question is, if we do get internal applications and everything goes well, when do you think would be the earliest that we could potentially hire a superintendent to succeed Mr. Lynch?
So I guess if we can I'd rather not take the cart before the horse.
Okay, sure.
What I'd like to do is talk and see if people want to go internally, and then if it's okay, I'll lay out to people, if the committee agrees with that, I will lay out sort of a plan from there, if that makes sense. Okay. If you have a question, go right ahead.
Yes, thank you. Just trying to remember how it works when you do hire externally. You mentioned a search committee, and if I remember correctly from my youth, that involves members of the town and teachers and whoever agrees to do the work, to do that kind of first vetting. Does that still occur when you hire internally, or does it kind of skip that step and go directly to the interviews with the school committee?
I would say this, and again, and maybe this is a little jumping after this decision. It would be my idea to the committee in this way, that there would still be conversations with the community. It would be in a different way with the candidates themselves doing that way. I don't want the community to miss out on, if we have some internal candidates, to miss out on asking them their questions, being able to get answers to their questions, being able to meet with them and have conversations with them. I would still want that to happen. It wouldn't happen in sort of the way that you outlined, in the sense that there's a search committee making that decision.
Right.
Most of the times, there's a search committee that makes that decision, gets to see all the resumes, whittles them down, gets to have a meeting with 10, 12 candidates privately. So the community is not involved in that at all. And then the final candidates, 2 things to happen. We do a visit here, and we do a visit wherever they're from. The visit here sort of walks around, they get to meet with certain people, have conversations. Last time, I thought it was important, and we included a town side, where the town manager met, the fire and police chiefs, I think the town accountant and town treasurer met with everybody, so that they could have conversations and solicit feedback. I would do similar things with internal candidates. It just wouldn't be, in my mind, to some extent, it would be more open, because.
Definitely more streamlined. I mean, I know trying to
you're not
find
gonna get
people
see
who are
the
willing to be
candidates
on a.
Till they're finalists.
Yep.
depending on the number, I would look at what the number is and say we could, that one of two things. If I had, for example, a large number of internal candidates, then we could create a committee just to whittle them down to a number.
Okay.
But I would also say that, I don't know that we'll get a large
Yep.
number, that's all.
So I just wanted to sound out that I think I'm the only town non-employed with Mr. Sullivan over there person here, but I think that makes a lot of sense as a representative, as a parent, that the community could still be involved and engaged in the process. But I know getting volunteers to be on a steering committee to sift through resumes and all of that is a difficult process as well, and it's time consuming. So I do think there's a benefit to the society and our community at large of looking at it as a more streamlined internal process. So thank you.
And I would also add that for the most part, I would say that the community knows these people and already has an idea of who they are. Now questions become different because they want to ask them what they do in different situations that the person's not
Right.
used to. And those are good questions to ask and be able to participate in.
Right, you can do it from the perspective of already knowing the person a little bit and broadening your question. So thank you for clarifying.
No problem. Any other questions? Mr. Hope?
No, actually, I would just make a motion that we consider internal candidates for this, based on everything you've said.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion.
I just want to make a comment that I have sat on the budget committee a couple times, and I've met with a lot of the administration, and I am impressed with the high quality that we have, thanks to Mr. Lynch. So I am fully in support of this.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Yeah, does this mean we'd only be considering administrative
No.
staff?
So again, it's internal candidates. I haven't said it just as administration.
All right, all right.
It is internal candidates. Because I think we have, clearly there are some, depending on the resumes we get, we look at, over and above, hold on one second, because I do want to read. It's not going to be there because I lost it, of course. They have to be either have a superintendent's license or be able to get a superintendent's license relatively quickly, and that would be one of the criteria.
Right, okay, thank you.
And so there's a motion on the table to search internal. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? So if no one objects, then I'm just looking so I can look ahead. I just want to look at my calendar. Today is January 6th. Our next meeting is the 20th. My suggestion is if we give people until the 28th of January to submit an application, because that would give me time to put together some information for you all at the first February meeting. That's 3 weeks if we count tomorrow. I'll work with Sean and I will send all staff notice to let them know we're going to seek internal candidates and how people can get a hold of me if they have questions and want to ask. And then I'll bring this to the meeting on the 3rd, and what we'll do is we'll set up how we do interviews and how we go forth after we see the numbers of people. Does that make sense? So Chair will entertain a motion that we close internal candidates on January 28th.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. So, thank you. Rich, go right ahead.
Mr. Chair. So given the time period that we just decided on to close, I wonder if could you outline a little bit, if everything just went exactly our way and we had that perfect candidate right off the bat, what would be the soonest?
So I would say, looking at multiple candidates. So let's assume multiple candidates.
Yeah.
What I would tell you that we would do is I'd put forth the 3 candidates from you, and I put out an outline. My outline would include most of February with various meetings for these people to be at, to be able to answer people's questions, to, sort of open up. I'd work with the administration to make sure there's space available. People could come in, ask them questions. I'd be there to take them through that and be a part of it. And then I'd also arrange interviews for them with town side staff or outside staff, if you will, outside people that would be part of the interview, and then process that information and present it to you, usually in a written form, about what we had or what people had said. And then my real guess is in early March, bring people together and have interviews in a particular night and then make a decision. A couple things. If a lot of candidates applied, I would say create a smaller search committee, interview the candidates and whittle it down to a certain number to come to this committee. And then at that point, rotate that out. I would also say that in making a decision in March that allows that we can negotiate a contract starting July 1st. Again, if it came internally, we could post on School Spring their position, so begin to hire, and they could begin to work with Brian. This would take them through negotiations. It would take them through the opportunity with budget, everything like that. And so what we did in the past, which I think was very helpful, is after meeting and interviewing the candidates, then we just took a break, if you will, and I asked everybody their thoughts, sort of going from Zeke down. And it gave people an opportunity to say whatever they wanted for as long as they wanted about the candidates, what they liked, and who they would choose. It's not a vote, it was just who you would choose. And then what we did from that last time was, given where we're at, we realized the majority of the committee had decided we would take Brian. And there was a motion made to approve Brian, and everyone sort of unanimously picked because they realized which way people were going. The only thing I will caution people about is that those final interviews with the school committee. They're truly interviews, and there's not a public comment piece. There is not, they're interviews for a position that the school committee decides. That's it. People will have a chance to give us input after meeting people, give us input about people. They have a right to do that all along. It's just the night when we interview people is an interview amongst us and the candidates. So that's sort of my outline, if that makes sense, Rich?
Sure.
And Greg, do you have questions?
Yeah, I just want to, I saw charting the course on here. When I went to that course, they said the school committee really has 2 jobs: hire a superintendent, approve a budget. That's basically what it's down. So I take this very seriously. This is a big decision. I agree with Mr. Oakley that I think we're in a good direction, but it's just important to keep it going that way. So my question is, I'm okay with the internal candidate. I think there are great candidates. I'm sure we'll get some great candidates, but what if we don't, what would be the process if, because it's a committee choice to decide on a candidate.
Yep.
What if we can't agree on a candidate or decide there isn't, like, for whatever reason, we don't find a candidate? Will
No,
we
it's a fair
then-
question. To be honest with you, I've also seen it in the same way that it's happened in bringing outside candidates in. The school committee can't decide. And to be honest with you, at that point, we'd start all over.
Okay.
I would probably recommend to the committee to go outside at that point, because they
Okay.
haven't made a decision internally to go outside. And all that, what that would really mean is, clearly the process starts in the way I normal out. But there would also be a piece that I would tell you all that I would have to go out and find a interim superintendent and come back and present that candidate to you to cover in the meantime.
Yep. So
'Cause
when
I just don't think
yeah.
we should be without a superintendent.
So by making this vote tonight, we're not committing to an internal candidate, but we're saying that's our first step.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely. And, there have been, I will tell you, there have been times where you've gone through the process and people have sort of dropped out because they just didn't like the process or it just didn't feel right for them, and that's okay too. So this is more trying to make and I get it's difficult. One of the things I always mention with the superintendent's review is superintendent and town manager are the only two people in the state who get reviewed in public. And people hear the good and the bad, right? And so this is a daunting task to come up on TV and interview for a job.
Yep.
So it's hard, but I would maintain also that being superintendent's a pretty hard gig. And you've got to get through these type of things in order to be ready to go. And again, if I didn't feel like we had qualified people, or I didn't feel like there were people here who could do it, I would clearly have never made this recommendation. Clearly, I would have allowed staff to apply, but I couldn't in good conscience say to everybody, like, I'm fine with people. I know who's up. Now, again, I say this not knowing if anyone will apply, and if they choose not to apply, that's okay too, and we'll start that process. But I really think that there are some great quality candidates here, and I think that they are ready to become superintendents. And, part of it for me is, given the pool of candidates we have, I'd much rather see them become a superintendent in Middleborough than watch them become a superintendent someplace else. So I hope that answers your question.
Yep, it does. Thank you.
Rich?
Mr. Chair, just given the time frame that you mentioned for the search committee, and the possibility, although I think unlikely, that we would not find a qualified internal candidate, does it make sense to do both? To entertain internal candidates, but also start the process of a search committee, just in case we get a month and a half down the road with internal candidates, we can't make a decision, then we're that much further ahead on the search? Is it an extreme cost to do that?
Well, no, so first of all, the committee decided to go internal.
Okay,
I'll say that.
So that's off the board.
So, but the other piece is, we're really talking a couple of weeks. If I don't have candidates, then I'm going to come here at the next meeting and start that process with you all and say we don't have candidates, but this is what I've done, this is what I've started looking at and gone through. I really, really hope there's internal candidates, and again, I don't know who's applying, and I can't emphasize that enough, but I can say that, I think there are good candidates here, and one of the things that we will not do here, and just so everyone knows, is we're not going to spend time with the superintendent asking his opinion, because that's unfair, because they all work for him. But I think if you ask the superintendent, are there people in this district who could be superintendent of schools? I'll let you answer that, Brian.
Yes, I do believe strongly that there are a number of qualified candidates.
So, given what you said, Mr. Chair, you're right, it's only a couple weeks.
Yep.
So I agree.
So that's all. And so anything else? Yes, Greg.
Response to Mr. Oakley is, if the internal route doesn't work out, then we're going with an interim. We're going to have more time to let that play out, because we'll have to get an interim.
Okay,
Yeah, anyway.
got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, everybody, I appreciate it. Did anyone in the audience have any questions or thoughts, if they want? Seeing no one, I will move on, and I appreciate it. I again, can't emphasize enough that this decision of mine was made much easier by knowing who we have here. And I really think highly of everybody who works in administration. I will tell you a funny story. As soon as I did have this conversation with Brian and Sarah about it, and the first thing Sarah told me was, I'm not applying.
Not enough spreadsheets in his office to keep me happy.
So next up on our agenda is MSBA. Charting the course. So I just wanted everyone to know, especially, I know Zeke, you haven't, there is a Charting the Course 2.5 in Everett, but in March, the Charting the Course is online. I don't know if it fits in your schedule, but I just wanted you to know.
That's an excellent,
No problem.
highly recommended.
And I think it will help too, as this process goes on, understanding. So one good thing about the superintendent leaving, and I would maintain it is the only good thing, is we don't have to do an evaluation this year. So that saves me quite a bit of work.
You could.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just to use Zeke, the charting the course is great. I know we talked about this before. It's almost difficult because of COVID right now, but I would maintain that the part that I got the most out of charting the course was actually just talking to other school committee members from other towns, and so I hope that the online version has some of that, but if there's any way you can make it to the Everett one and you feel safe to do that, I think that was a really beneficial part for me, so I'd recommend it.
All right. Well, is there a date for that? Where do I go?
The
to
Everett
search
one is
for that?
2/5. The other one is in March. I'm not sure. The online one is in March. There will be more, Zeke, if you're interested in the in-person one. And one other thing is just let me know, because I'll just have Ann sign you up. I'll let you know the dates and have Ann sign you up, and that way we'll just go through the district. It'll be easy. Because we have an
All right,
account
thank
with MASC. MSBA, Brian, did you have anything?
I guess the only update is they continue to work on the area that was flooded. That's almost done. Hopefully will be done by January teens. And the other piece is, I know that Hutch walked the site, the parking lot, with Bill Logan, contractor who has the plowing for this high school, and he was able to get used to and get a sense of the area and where he was going to put snow, because it's really not a lot of places to put snow in that parking lot. And I think they've basically made those decisions. So Dave Blanton from the DPW, Jim Hutch again, and Billy Logan from Logan Enterprises came down and took a look just in time, because tomorrow will be the first experience plowing that lot of 6 to 8 inches, and hopefully that'll be an experiment, a positive experiment.
And one other thing, just so everyone knows, is the owner project manager for us, we got an email today from the building committee. They have to do a standard contractor evaluation form for every contractor and subcontractor we used in this building, which
How many is that?
I'm gonna say it's probably about 200 at least.
More than one.
And so that was amazing to me. I didn't realize they had to do it, and to go back to what we had talked about before about qualified bidders, one of the things that you're allowed to look at is these forms to say, these had an unfavorable rate, that's why. Because there was one contractor that I can remember who was the lowest bidder, but all their references came back negative, and we didn't choose them for that reason. And you can use that as a reason going forward. Any other questions about this building? This is like my mech roof. Someday this will be off, and I hope I'm still on the committee when this is off. Consent agenda. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So, second.
Discussion. Consent agenda tonight is just fundraisers and meeting minutes and approval warrants. Rich?
Sorry, I did actually have a question under discussion for this. If a teacher or anyone in the district wants to run a fundraiser, what is the best way that they can learn what requirements there are and how to start that?
They go to the principal.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. We did take care of the chiller replacement vote, and there's 2 donations on board. There's Life Touch and Hannaford's Helps. Hannaford is sort of a regular, and we do want to thank them over and over again. Our next school committee meeting is January 20th. With that, Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Do I hear a second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you, everybody. And remember, tomorrow's a snow day.